Hey everybody, quick video check-in as we move into Unit 7, which is, as I mentioned in a previous announcement, our first major writing assignment for the course, so our first major essay. So one of the things that I thought I would do is just click into the grading breakdown here, and basically we worked through units that involved, I think the biggest point value was like 50 for one of the writing assignments, but otherwise it's smaller quizzes, discussion boards, that kind of thing. So, like I'd mentioned before, really working with some component pieces or concepts or ideas, and now, of course, is the opportunity where we bring those all together. So you really want to think about Essay 1 as your first chance to show me at this point, kind of midway or a little bit past in the course, that you've pretty much understood all of those concepts that we've worked on so far in the class. So like I'd mentioned before, this is a really good opportunity to sort of review what we've covered, even if it's just skimming through the units, looking at some of the diagrams or videos again, just that kind of basic review before you sit down to write the essay. Also, just in terms of point value, we're now looking at an essay that's worth 100, which is not honestly huge in a class where there's 1,000 points, but it certainly is more valuable in terms of points than previous units, and is ultimately building up to that third or our final essay, which is worth 400. So now is a good time to sort of address the fact that this final essay, once we get to it, is really weighted heavily for the course, almost half of the entire course. So as with a lot of things, this can work against you, obviously, if you really haven't paid attention to what's going on, or you've sort of done, mediocre work, just haven't invested a lot of time or energy, just do it. Yeah, I got the 30 points for the discussion board. I didn't really make an effort, but at least I got the points. That will come back to haunt you, because if you didn't learn the concepts, then you may have got the small points for doing something simple like a discussion board post. But then when it comes to the application of that idea in an essay, especially when it's worth as much as 400, you end up losing in the long run. So this is sort of a professorial lecture time, pay attention and do your work. But so again, it's heavily weighted, which means that even if you've done really well, despite the effort you've put in throughout the course, if you can't apply those concepts in the final essay, then your grade can really suffer, really suffer, honestly. The flip side is true then, and this is what you want to make work for your advantage, is that if you have invested the effort in learning these concepts, and none of them are very complex, and there's lots of examples throughout the course. I'm here as a resource if you have questions, as far as like formatting a works cited page, there's lots of examples to follow. Because that essay is weighted so heavily, you can make that work to your advantage by doing these basic things correctly and kind of getting all those points in a fairly easy way, in as much as all you're doing is applying the concepts that we've already learned, or certain skills that we've already practiced in that final essay. So it's weighted heavily, but you can make that work to your advantage, not necessarily against you. But that's getting a little bit ahead of us right now. So we're looking at our first essay, Unit 7, and I'll give you the due date here just as a reminder. Friday, July 15th, so again, fairly quick turnaround, but honestly, despite the fact that it's our first major writing assignment, it's very narrow in scope. So not only is the length of the essay fairly limited, you're not required to use any secondary sources at this point. So Unit 6 had you finding what might be appropriate secondary material for this kind of essay, but we won't actually apply that, until Unit 8, which is actually a rewrite or a revision of the Unit 7 essay based on feedback from me, but also then the incorporation of a secondary source. So really the only source you're looking at for the Unit 7 essay is the primary source, the short story that you want to talk about. And here's a big caveat or a big warning. Many people like, of all the stories we've read so far, Flight Patterns. It is a great story. It's really interesting, intriguing characters. But there, for whatever reason, is a real lack of easily accessible secondary source material. So I will tell you right now, it's a bad idea to write about flight patterns for Unit 7, not because you can't do a good essay for Unit 7, but because it really comes back for Unit 8 when you're trying to find that secondary source and you're sort of stuck because of course there are things you can find, but nothing works very well as far as the kind of source we're looking for. Nothing's really immediately applicable, and nothing's easily accessible in the way that it is, as you might have found for any of the other stories. There's lots of great sources on Monroe's Boys and Girls, on Araby, on Gorilla My Love. So opt for one of those just because it sets you up a little better for Unit 8 as far as finding the secondary source. Okay, so a couple of really basic things there that I'm reading right out of the unit, so you're reading the same stuff. Obviously, again, focus on this essay as just a continuation of what we've been doing. So this is not suddenly a new style of writing or your opinion about whether a story is good or bad or anything like that.